This is Misha Houston, and I'm here to do my review of the haves and the have nots. Tonight's episode is entitled Every 6 Months. And I have to say that it was a so so episode. It kind of felt like the calm before the storm, but there were a few scenes that were very nice. But overall, I just didn't think that much of the episode. But I do appreciate it that they are trying to move the story a little bit more forward, and next week does seem very promising. It seems like it's going to come to a head, in the next few weeks. So I appreciate that. And this, as I said before, it kind of felt like the calm before the storm. So I appreciated the episode. I can't wait to see it next week. And I hope that it will be a whole lot better, in time. Now, as I said before, this episode was called Every 6 Months. And here we go. The first group of people we go to is Candace, Quita, D.A. George, the police, and Jeffrey Harrington. Now, we pick up right where we left off. Candace and Quita are battling it out in the jail cell. There it is a slugfest in there, and everyone in the jail is hooting and hollering and cheering and jeering them, and they are just completely and totally at war. It's a slugfest, and Candace is on top of Quita and is punching her in the face. And as I said, last week, that there are locks of hair on the floor of the jail. Now, the police, come in and they break the two of them up, and they're screaming and hollering and cursing each other. They're calling each other bitch and saying these horrible, vulgar words to each other. Candace is throwing it up in Quita's face that Quincy is dead, her brother is dead, and Quita, is angry and hurt and upset and being held back by the police officers. They came to, stop this fighting. So the police have to step in the middle of them and, and pull them apart. Then D.A. George walks in wanting to talk to Candace. They bring Candace outside of the jail, and D.A. George is there, and he wants to talk to Candace about the case. They take her into the interrogation room, and D.A. George, is fishing for information. He's fishing, for evidence that they can use to go forward with this case because he really doesn't have any. His warrant was invalid, as we learned a few seasons ago. So that means he really has no case. All he has now is a witness, and the witness is Jeffrey Harrington. But he knows that Jeffrey is not going to testify against himself and incriminate himself and open himself up to prison. So he really doesn't have anything. So he's with Candace and he's fishing for information. Candace isn't giving him anything. Candace, is very short with him, very rude. He's trying to ask questions. He's bringing forth, the bracelet that Benny was wearing. And he also mentions that the keys, Jeffrey's car keys, were also with the body. Now, Candace knows that the body that was found in the backyard is inadmissible in court because the warrant was bad. And with a set of keys and a bracelet, there's really no case to, there isn't enough evidence to move forward with the case. She did go to law school and she knows the law and she knows not to say anything to the police. George, realizes that Candace isn't going to say anything no matter how many questions that he asks her. So he tells her that you're pretty much free to go. He realizes that she may have some friends in high places, most likely Charles, the president, the future president, Charles. I think it may have been him that helped her out of this situation. And if it wasn't him, then it was certainly Veronica because of the plan that the two of them have in place against David. So Candace, is released. G.A. George says that he that she needs to have her paperwork processed, and it's going to be a little bit of a while of a wait. But she is, being released from the jail, and the charges against her have been dropped. Now, while she's waiting, and after George leaves, Jeffrey walks into the room, and I'm going to discuss that in the next section. The next group of people we go to is Candace Jeffrey, a lady detective, and David Harrington. Now, they bring Jeffrey into the interrogation room, and then two of them start to talk. Now, Candace is all about Jeffrey, remaining silent. The best thing that they both can do for the both of them, is just not to say anything and not talk. But Jeffrey, is starting to crack up underneath the pressure, and he's starting to turn on Candace. He's been turning on Candace for a while now, and he's starting to blame her for this situation. He can't believe that Veronica, did this to him, but Candace is telling him, you shouldn't be surprised by this. She's always been trying to hurt you, and this is just the latest, in her, war against him. And then Jeffrey, starts to wonder, why did Veronica help you? Why did Veronica get you out of here and put me in there? And she, feigns ignorance. She's saying that there was nothing to hold me here. No one got me out. Uh, no one got me out, and there was nothing to keep me here because they don't have anything. But Jeffrey, is very suspicious of Candace now, and he's saying that don't let me find out that you are against me. Now Candace, doesn't want, Jeffrey in jail. She wants this whole situation to just go away. But it's not going away, at least not for Jeffrey. Jeffrey is being abused, in prison with that mess with Justin. We're gonna see Justin come back into the story next week, and it's probably gonna be some more abuse there. But she is telling him, there are cameras in this room. Be quiet, don't say anything. And then he starts to call out, for a guard, making like he's gonna something tell them something about the case. And she is just, fed up with Jeffrey. And she's saying, like, you know me. And then she takes a threatening tone with him and says, you know me. So shut your fucking mouth. I mean, it's really, really gotten bad between those two. Jeffrey, blames Candace for this situation, even though it was Veronica who brought Quincy, into their lives and sent Quincy after him. But, he's looking for someone to blame. He's afraid. He's angry. He's upset. He fears the situation that he's in. And he's starting to take it out on Candace, and you can see that. And Candace, is very upset and getting, angrier by the minute, due to his accusations. Now, a lady detective comes in, and pretty much they take Candace out of the room. She's been released from prison. She's been released, and the lady detective at the desk tells her that all of this has just disappeared. And she is starting to wonder, how did you manage that? You must have some friends in high places. But, Candace makes a joke, doesn't say anything. She puts her shoes back on, takes her purse, and then tries to leave. As she's going for the door, she runs into David. Now, David, is trying to convince her, himself, and everyone else that Jeffrey didn't kill Quincy, but we all know, and Candace knows, that that's not true. He wants for Candace to take a dive for Jeffrey, to turn herself in for the crime, and so Jeffrey can go free. But Candace is not interested in doing that. She doesn't want Jeffrey in jail, but she's not going to put herself in jail just to get him out. She tells David that, hey, this is something that Jeffrey did. David doesn't want to believe that Jeffrey did this crime, but it is true. And Candace tells him that this is true. Your son really did kill this man. Now, he starts, he stands upon his soapbox and he starts to, blame Candace for all of this. But she says that it wasn't me who did this, it was Veronica. She was the one who brought that man into everyone's life. Now, he accuses her of having no honor and having no decency, and Candace agrees with that. And he's disgusted by her at this point. But then she brings up Oscar. She brings up Oscar. And David lies right to her face, saying that I don't know who Oscar is, but she knows that Oscar worked for David Harrington. She accuses him of sending Oscar after him to play with her heart, to lie to her and steal all of her money. But David says, "So what if I did?" And then Candace says, "Oh, this is just payback for you. This is nothing but payback." She's striking back out at David, and she wants even more payback, as we're gonna see later on in the episode. David, wants for Candace to take the fall for this, but she refuses to. And she says that, I mean, are you sure you're going to do this? And then she makes a comment saying biblical proportions, which is something that David said to her once. So she's all about getting payback against David. I don't think she wants Jeffrey in jail, but hey, if it's any way to hurt David, it's to the best way to hurt him is to go through Jeffrey. The next group of people we go to is Landon and his female coworker. I think that her name is Madeleine, but I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look that up for you. Now, Landon is waiting outside of Charles's room when Madeleine, or the female coworker, comes in. He's very irritated by her because in the last episode, he, she told him some truths about himself that he was not ready to face. He starts to, dole out these left-handed insults to her, saying that, oh, you look hungover and things of that sort. And she picks up on it and she tells him that I'm not trying to hurt you. I was only trying to tell you the truth. But Landon, is acting very snotty with her and doesn't really want to face, how he feels about Charles. She says that I know that you're in love with him, but Landon doesn't want to face that. He's trying to bury it, he's trying to cover it up as best he can, but as I think we all can see that he certainly has feelings for Charles. They get into an argument with each other, and then he brings up a senator, a married senator that she was in love with once, and she takes offense to that. And they go back and forth arguing with each other, and saying how silly it was for the two of them to fall for unavailable people. It gets very personal, it gets very, very angry and very personal in a hurry. It's a very short scene, but Landon, is resistant of her. She's trying to tell him the truth. You're chasing after a straight man, and not only a straight man that's about to be the president of the United States. And she's trying to tell him how foolhardy that is. But Landon doesn't want to hear it. He's acting very snotty, as I said before. And it gets to the point where she says, if I can't tell you the truth, if you aren't man enough to hear the truth, then maybe we shouldn't be friends. Maybe we shouldn't be talking to each other. Maybe we shouldn't, associate with each other anymore outside of work. And Landon agrees with that and she walks away. But I think that he realizes that she was right all along. I mean, later on we're going to get into another scene with Landon and Charles, and it is just it's shining through how much feeling that he has for Charles. So Landon, kind of needs to come to terms with himself and how he feels about this, before he drives another person away. The next group of people we go to is Hannah, Derek, and Catherine. Now, Hannah and Derek are in the kitchen, and she's telling Derek, some silly, funny story about something that happened to her in church, about how a man, pretended to have the Holy Spirit in him, but only, wanted to reach out and grab her breast. And they're both laughing and enjoying each other and their time together. And Derek, is happy that she is happy. He comments saying that when I first met you, you were so sad, and all I wanted to do was hug you. And Hannah says, "I'm glad that you didn't." But she is, warming up. She's got a smile on her face. She's laughing and enjoying herself. And it's been a long time for Hannah. It was good to see her laugh and smile for a change, instead of, being this angry, self-righteous person that she's been for such a long time. Now, Derek, wants to continue on, having coffee and enjoying themselves. But Hannah says that she has to go upstairs to help the new maid, and she thinks that he has some work to do as well, which he really doesn't. Then he starts, to try to convince her to go out with him on a real date, on a proper date. But Hannah, is, very hesitant about that. She doesn't have much of a love life, and since, and I think it comes, in part because of her time with Tony, Benny's father, and the rapist, which is Candace's father. So, she doesn't really have much of a love life. But apparently she decides, reluctantly, to go out with him on a date. N- And she is very happy and pleased with that. She's a little sassy about it, but, it's Hannah. And she is making a step, a step in a good direction. She's trying, to go on with, with her life after Quincy's death, and she's decided to go out on a date with Derek. And I'm here for that. I think Derek is a very nice man, and I think it would be nice for her to spend some time with a good guy. Now, she doesn't really care where they go as long as it's not fancy. And you know how Hannah is. Nothing can be fancy. Everything has to be plain and and run down in order for Hannah to like it. But rather she decides to go out with him as long as the place isn't too fancy. Now she says that she has to go and that you can give me a call. And she says that I bet you already know my number since that heifer, which is Catherine, gave it to her. They both laugh about the joke, and Hannah goes on her way. Now, Catherine, is listening in. She's eavesdropping, and she hears Hannah come. So she runs back to the couch, puts a magazine in her hand and pretends to be reading. But Hannah knows that she was eavesdropping, and Catherine confirms it. She asks Hannah, "Are you gonna go out on a date with him?" And Hannah, says yes. I'm gonna go on and have a date with the man that Catherine, set up for her. Catherine, floats the idea of Hannah having a spa day and having a nice makeover so she can look good for the date. But, Hannah, can't take the blessing when it's offered. And she says that no, if he's going to go out with me, he's just going to go out with me, as I'm looking like this. Catherine, tries to give her tries to convince her, but Hannah says no, she's not interested in a makeover. She says that she's got to go upstairs and help the new maid, and Catherine, tries to convince her about the makeover, but Hannah is not interested in that at all. She just wants to go, for herself, looking like herself. She doesn't want to get glammed up for a date. So Catherine is pleased. Hannah is going out on a date with Derek, and I hope for Hannah's sake that the date goes well. The next group of people we go to is Oscar, Quita, and an officer. Now, Quita has been released from prison, and Oscar is outside waiting for her. He tells her that it was me who got you out of jail, and she's wondering for what. Quita, is the person that is closest to Wyatt, and Oscar is trying to weasel Wyatt out of his money, so he has gone to her for help. Now, she doesn't trust him, doesn't want to talk to him, calls him a white man, and I guess, she's borderline racist and doesn't want to talk to the white man. But he threatens her, saying, if you don't talk to me right now, I'll just have the officers come over here and send you back in prison again. Quita, eventually agrees to talk to him, and she thinks that he's nothing but a trick and that he just wants to sleep with her. But that's not true. He just wants some information. He wants information about Quita and her arrest and why she was arrested. She was caught trying to use Wyatt's credit card. She was caught by the police, and he wants to know the PIN number. Now he knows that she kept trying to enter a PIN number in the in the machine outside of the bank, but apparently the password, the four-number password was not accepted. Now Oscar wants that PIN number, and Quita, told him that I tried the number multiple times, but it didn't work. He must have changed it. So, that avenue, as far as Oscar goes, is pretty much closed to him. But he gives Quita $500. She takes the money, and he says that I may need some more information for you. Here is my card. He gives her the card, and she takes the money, and she's offering again, do you want to sleep with me for $500? I'll sleep with you. But Oscar says no, all I need is some information, and they part ways. Now, an officer, a black man, comes up to him, and he says that, did you get any kind of information out of her? And he says no. And then he expects payment because, apparently the cop, took a bribe from Oscar, and he expects his money as well. Now, apparently, Oscar makes another deal with the officer, saying, I'll give you another grand if you do something for me. And they go off and they talk together, and that's pretty much how that scene ends. Now Oscar, as I said before, is trying to weasel money out of Wyatt, so to fill his pockets and to pay the money back to Jim and Catherine. And he's going to Quita, and he's going to the officers. He's bribing people, and the people are taking the bribes. And I think Oscar, eventually will get the money from Wyatt. The next group of people we go to is Veronica and David. Now, David calls Veronica, wanting her to stop this treatment of Jeffrey, and to help him get out of jail. But Veronica is not interested in that. She calls him a girl and says that that girl was going to testify against me, and I just beat him to the punch. And David is wondering what girl, and then Veronica says our son Jeffrey. She's still berating Jeffrey. She's still hurting him, not accepting that he is a proud gay man. David is not worried about any of that. He just wants Jeffrey out of jail. And he, is starting to believe the lie that it was Candace and Benny who killed Quincy and not Jeffrey. But everyone is telling him, including Veronica, that it was Jeffrey who did this and not Candace and Benny. Now, he is just refusing, to be bothered with Veronica. He doesn't really want to be bothered with her, but he really has no choice. He has to deal with Veronica, to try to get Jeffrey out of jail. He's struggling. He's struggling for help, struggling trying to get his son out of prison. Now, she, completely, doesn't really want to talk about Jeffrey, and she wants to talk about who ran her off of the road. She thinks that it was either David, Jim, or Catherine. And it was neither of them. It was actually Justin who did the deed. But she thinks that it was David, and she threatens him, saying that if I find out that you were a part of it, and if I find out who it was, I'm going to come after you. David, doesn't know what she's talking about. He just wants to talk about Jeffrey. He doesn't know anything about what Justin did to Veronica, and personally, I don't think that he would even care. If push came to shove. Now he is trying to get Veronica, to talk more about Jeffrey and leave these other subjects behind, but Veronica is unwilling to talk about Jeffrey anymore. She is happy that he is in prison, and Veronica is just hateful and evil, and we all know who Veronica is. It's we don't even need another description of how horrible she is, but here we are. Then she starts to threaten Erika, calling her a whore, saying that when I find that whore, I'm gonna send her back to you in little pieces, which really, really angers David. We both know how Veronica can be when another woman comes into the picture. Well, we all remember Maggie Day and how she set her up to be killed, and now here she is threatening Erika, calling her names and insulting her, openly insulting her and threatening her. And David is angry about all of this. He says, "Does this make you angry?" And she says yes. And then David says, "Now you know how I feel in regards to Jeffrey." But he's trying to get her to go to make some sort of concession on Jeffrey's behalf, but Veronica is not hearing it. She says she's bored with the conversation and she hangs up the phone. So we all know that Veronica isn't going to lift a finger to help her son. She was the one who put that boy into that situation. I mean, it surprises me how shocked both David and Jeffrey are by Veronica's actions, but they should know her by now. They should know it by now. It shouldn't be such a shock to the both of them what Veronica will do. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I just can't believe how they can't believe that Veronica would do something like this. This is exactly the kind of thing that Veronica would do. The next group of people we go to is Wyatt and Oscar. And Oscar is pretending to be Lyle Jefferson. Now, Wyatt calls his bank saying that there were some fraudulent charges on his credit card and he wants to go about getting his money back. The bank says we're gonna have to get a police report of an official police report to prove that you were robbed, and then the bank will reimburse his money. Now, after hearing this, he calls Lyle Jefferson, who is Oscar in disguise, and he says that he wants to come down, to the police station to go about getting a police report. Now, Oscar, who is pretending to be Lyle, tries to get Wyatt's bank information over the phone, but Wyatt refuses to give it. And he says he wants to just come down there and fill out, get the police report in hand so he can and go and deliver it to the bank. Now, Oscar, who is pretending to be Lyle, says that you can come on down to the police station and fill out a police report. He Wyatt asks what station will it be at, and Oscar says the 11th precinct, but to give him an hour that he's on another call right now. So Wyatt is coming down to the police station, as we'll see later on in the episode. And Oscar is on the move himself, trying to get to the police station in the hopes that he can steal Wyatt's money. The next group of people we go to is Mitch, Benny, and Mitch's uncle, Vinny. Now, Mitch and Benny go to a restaurant called the Iron Bone. In the Iron Bone, Benny, Mitch's uncle, is sitting at a booth with hundreds and thousands of dollars spread out in front of him. Mitch, has come to Benny on Benny's behalf to ask for a favor. Now, Mitch, is talking to his uncle about a loan for $45,000. And Benny doesn't want to give Benny the loan because he is a black man and he doesn't look like he could ever pay it back. But Mitch drops his sister's name, Candace. He says that Candace was the one who brought them Warlock, and now, as we all know, Warlock is dead. And because of that, it gives Benny credibility with Benny. Benny, talks to Benny about his situation, about how he lost his truck, and Benny approves of the loan. He says, you want a truck for $45,000, and he is willing to give the money. He says that this money is going to come with a 25% interest tax, upon the money. And I did, a little bit of research on that, and it comes to a little over $11,000. So because of that, he's going to have to pay back over $50,000 now. 55, 56, $55,000 or $56,000 in total. So he says that those are the terms, and Benny is willing to accept those terms. Benny says that every 6 months you're going to have to come up with $18,000. So that's his deadline. From here to 6 months, from that day to 6 months, he's going to have to come up with $18,000, or he's going to have to suffer, some sort of bodily harm to himself. Then he said that um, you're gonna have to pay this money back, or you're gonna, most likely have to deal with the mob now. But Benny is unafraid. He thinks that he can do it. He thinks that if he can tow enough cars and get his business up and running, he can pay back the money and get this all off of his record. So pretty much he's decided to take the loan from Benny. He's gonna accept the consequences if he doesn't pay back, and it's I hope that Benny can pay it back. Now, Mitch, after they get up from the table, Mitch says that once we walk out this door, I can't take, we can't take it back. This is how it's got to be. And Benny is down for it. He thinks he can hustle and make up the money. He thinks he can pay the money back. So Benny is willing to go ahead and take this risk to get his tow truck and get his business up and running. The next group of people we go to is Erika and Candice. Now, Candice, who was released from prison, has tracked down Erika and comes to David's house. Now, Erika, tries to be pleasant with Candice, but Candice, just goes directly into her insults and her threats to Erika. Now, Candice, tells Erika that she's changed her mind and that she doesn't want the money just yet. Erika agrees with that. And Candice and Erika both agree that it is too soon to try to expunge money off of him. But instead, Candice wants Erika to get as much information as she can out of David. She wants numbers and statements and, codes to his other accounts and his blood type. I mean, she just wants all of the information that she can get out of out of David. She wants to bring him down. So, and there's always been a war between the two of them, and now Candace has Erika, supposedly has Erika on her side, and Candace wants as much information, as much, any kind of intel that she can get on David from Erika. And Erika reluctantly agrees to do this after a few threats, after a few insults, after a few curses. Candace is, as I said, many times before, she has become the new warlock. She's making all these threats: do what I say or I'll kill you, just like Warlock used to do. I mean, it's just, you can really tell that Candace is against Erika and vice versa. And Erika, for now, is putting up with it. But I don't think it'll always be like this forever. I have no love for Erica, but if I were Candace, I would be very careful because Warlock went down that road with Candace and he ended up losing his life. And the same thing could happen, to Candace if she continues on, with these threats and this blackmail, with Erica. Now, before I go on to the next section, I saw a plot hole in the writing. Now, as Candace is leaving the house, she gets into her car and drives away. Where did Candace get that car? The bank took hold of her car, so she doesn't really have anything. She has no money. They took possession of the house. She has no money. So where did she get the car from? I mean, I expected her to show up, to the house in a cab, but she drives off in a very nice car. So where did she get the money to buy the car, or to? I mean, how could she? Where is she getting that car from? I mean, that's pretty much the plot hole that I spotted in that scene. Where did Candace get the money to buy that car? How is she? How is she getting around town in such a nice and expensive car with no money? Well, I guess we're gonna have to, maybe we'll have to see. Maybe we're gonna have to see what happens there. The next two people we go to is Charles and Landon. Now, back in Charles's hotel room, Landon gushes over him and compliments him and says that he did a wonderful job, in his campaign today. And Charles says that he was just doing his job. Then Landon kneels down and tries to take off Charles's shoes. And Charles, immediately stops him and says, "What are you doing?" And Landon says, "I'm trying to take off your shoes." But, Charles tells him, "No, I can do that myself. I can take off and put on my own shoes." And then Landon says, "Resisting will only make it harder." And Charles is trying to figure out what he's talking about. And Landon says everything that goes with becoming the president, the power, the Air Force One, the Secret Service, all of this and all of that, that comes with being the president of the United States. Now, Charles is pretty unsure about the campaign, but Landon says it's going to be great. It's going to be a great 8 years. It's going to be 8 years minimum. Landon believes in Charles and obviously has feelings for him, and he's blushing and gushing and smiling, and he's obviously happy in his presence. And throughout the conversation, the conversation turns to Charles and his children. And Charles asks Landon to look out for my kids. I don't want them hounded by the press. I want them to have, the closest thing to a normal life as possible. He says that my kids, if once I get out of this, my kids will be teenagers or close to being teenagers. And he doesn't want them hounding, you know, them to be hounded in the press and have to grow up in the press's eye. And Landon agrees, wholeheartedly and tells him, "I will do this for you and whatever else you ask me to do." So, I mean, Landon is, obviously smitten and taken with Charles, and Charles is taking full advantage of it. Landon, offers one more time to take off his shoes, but Charles, denies him and tells him, "No, I can take off my own shoes and I just want to, chill and relax." And Landon leaves the room. The next group of people we go to is Oscar Wyatt and a police officer named Jonathan Holmes. Now, Wyatt comes down to the jail to fill out a police report, for his stolen credit card. He talks to the desk sergeant, the lady desk sergeant at the front desk, tells her everything, and she takes him on into the interrogation room. Now, a minute later, a police officer by the name of Jonathan Holmes comes in and he talks to Wyatt about what happened. Wyatt says that he had his credit card stolen by Laquita Maxwell and she was arrested for the crime. Now, Wyatt doesn't know that Laquita has been released, but I don't think he's ever going to know about that. Now, Jonathan Holmes, the police officer, the same police officer that took a bribe from Oscar, comes in, tells him to write down everything he knows, and he also asks for his cell phone to trade numbers in to make everything all nice and tidy. And Wyatt falls for that. He falls for that when they should have asked him for was his cell phone number, not his cell phone itself. But Wyatt gives up the cell phone to Officer Jonathan Holmes and then he leaves the room. Now, during, as this is going on, during all of this that's going on, Oscar is watching him through the glass. He's watching him and watching all of this go down. And he's standing there waiting for Jonathan Holmes to come out of the room. Jonathan Holmes, the officer, comes to Oscar and says, "Here's the phone. Where's my money?" Oscar gives Jonathan Holmes $1,000, and in exchange, Jonathan Holmes gives Oscar the phone. So Oscar has gotten a hold to Wyatt's phone. I don't know what kind of information there is on it, but he certainly is gathering information to try to steal his money from him. The next two people we go to is Jim and Sarah. Now, Sarah comes to Jim's hotel room with the evidence that he threatened out of her. Jim told her that he wants every piece of evidence that pertains to him and his case. And Sarah managed to get it. She managed to get all the evidence away from George, and now it is all in Jim's hands. She is, hurt and disgusted by herself while Jim is as smug and heavy handed, well, rather high handed as ever. He is gloating. He's saying, "Oh, I can't wait to see the look on that on George's face. You know how smug and arrogant he is, and he thinks he's won." Sarah, you know, juxtaposed to his victory dance and his attitude, she's disgusted with herself. She is horrified by what she's done. She hates this, and she really doesn't want to be bothered with Jim or this situation anymore. She asked him multiple times, "Are we done? Is this over?" And eventually Jim, after a few jokes, he says, "Yes, you're free. Just go on and go home." She's hoping that Jim, will not call her ever again. And Jim says that he may call in the future, but for now, she can just go ahead, go home. This is done for now. Just go home, have a drink. And Sarah eventually, leaves the hotel room. The last scene of the night belongs to Veronica, Melissa, Benny, and David. Now, Veronica gets up to answer the door, and Melissa, is in her feelings about Veronica and makes snide comments at her. And before she can answer the door, Veronica gets in Melissa's face, threatening her, saying how tired she is of her and vice versa. Melissa isn't afraid of Veronica anymore after what she did, after forcing her off of the road along with Justin, and she's standing up to Veronica as best as she can. Now, Veronica is threatening Melissa, saying the only reason that you're still alive is because you're carrying my baby. Then she hits her belly. Melissa hits her belly and says, it's because of the baby, because I'm not afraid of you anymore. So at least it's a good thing that Melissa is trying to stand up against Veronica. Veronica, tells the person to come in, and it's Benny. They immediately start battling over Benny's attention, Veronica and Melissa. They go back and forth with each other, trying to outdo each other in Benny's eyes. But Benny, isn't here for any of that. He says, "What's going on here?" And Veronica takes him upstairs to her bedroom. Now, in the bedroom, she lies to Benny and says that Jeffrey told them everything. Jeffrey didn't, but we all know that's a lie. Jeffrey wasn't the one who spilled the beans, it was Veronica. But she lies to Benny, saying that Jeffrey told them everything about what happened and that he could be in very serious trouble. Now, Benny is, starting to freak out about this. He's worried, he's upset, and Veronica is assuring him that she can handle it all. She tells him that the body is inadmissible, but she doesn't tell him how the body became inadmissible. Now, Benny, who doesn't know the law, who doesn't understand, who isn't so bright, is worried, but she says that she can handle it. Then she starts to come on to Benny, throwing herself at him like she's done so many times in the past. Um, Benny, being a young man, is aroused by Veronica, and she picks up on it, and she tells him to undress, and he starts taking off his clothes. Benny says that you ought to be paying me some money for this. But Veronica says, "Oh no, you be paying me," and then they end up in bed together having sex. Now downstairs, Melissa hears the doorbell ring, and she immediately, in her crazy mind, starts snapping again and saying, "Just come on in. This bitch has so many visitors." And it's David, and David wants to talk to Veronica about what happened. Now, Melissa says that she's up in her room. "I'll take you up there." And they get up to the room. She picks the lock and barges into the bedroom with David behind her. And they both see the two of them, Veronica and Benny, having sex together. And that is how the episode ends. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you like my video, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will be back next week with the next episode. My MVP of this episode was Hannah because she decided to take a chance and go out with Derek and hopefully have a good time with him. So for that, I have made Hannah my MVP. Thank you so much for watching my video. I didn't expect for it to be this long, but this is how it ended up. There were like 14 or 15 scenes in this, much more than what is normally, what is normal, for this show. But I'm here. I finished my video, and I will be back next week for the next episode, which will be entitled Wicked of the Haves and the Have-Nots. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your life as I do, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.